Now call on Deputy Peadar Tóibín.
I wish to warmly welcome this report from the Finance Committee. The figures are astounding that are contained in the report. There are 18,000 mortgages valued at €3.9 billion currently in the hands of unregulated vulture funds. Thousands of family homes, rental properties, businesses and family farms right across the country are in the grip of vulture funds. And the business model of these vulture funds is very simple. They seek to profit from asset stripping. They buy in bulk at knockdown prices and they maximise the return that they can get. They buy cheap, they grind out what they can get, and then they leave. And obviously, I've heard of cases in my own county where they have bought at maybe 25 cents in the euro and then pursued the individual family for up to 80 or 90 cents in the euro. And it's radically wrong that this system would actually be allowed to happen. And it's not a system, unfortunately, that has happened by accident. It's a system that was actually designed and created by the government. And I give an example of one family in my own county. There's a family called the McCann brothers. They bought 38 acres of land in Meath a decade ago. Unfortunately, like many others, they bought it at the top of the market, and since then they got into financial difficulties. They offered about 20 acres at the time as a security to Ulster Bank, and the loan was then sold to the vulture funds. So the vulture funds have sought to sell the 38 acres, the 20 acres that was given as security at auction, and they never even gave the family prior knowledge it was going to auction. In actual fact, the credit servicing firm was negotiating at the time while they put it up on auction. And they when they put it up on auction, they said that the land was vacant, which it clearly wasn't. After the sale of all that land, they aim to pursue the family for any outstanding debt that there exists. Now, to try and satisfy it, to try and fix this, the McCanns have sold the family farm. They paid down about 80 grand from that. They've also remortgaged another brother's home, which is about 150 grand on that, went down to pay the mortgage. And in addition, they sold a site on the land and handed the proceeds over to the bank to bring it down. They've gone to the credit servicing firms with a repayment package on top of this. But today, their debt level basically stands at what it was on the first day. So after all of those changes, they owe roughly the same money that they took out at the same time. The IFA has been helping with them, and they have put forward further proposals that would see part of the land sold in voluntary sale rather than forced sale. Now, it's incredible that the deal being accepted, if the vulture fund accepted the new deal and they enabled the McCann family to stay farming, they would still be getting double the amount of money that they paid the Ulster Bank for. That's mind-blowing, that there is such level of asset stripping here. Double the money that they paid for it, and they're still not satisfied with it. Now, I remember standing here about 4 years ago in front of Michael Noonan at the time, and we were just horrified at Fine Gael's plans with regards these vulture funds. And I said to him, it doesn't make any sense selling these properties at knockdown prices to vulture funds. Why not at least offer the families or the businesses or the farmers these properties roughly at the same price? After all, they've invested their lives in them, and if you give it to the businesses or the farmers, you'll make sure that jobs won't be lost. If you give it to the families, you won't be putting people onto the homeless register. And Michael Noonan refused that logic. And basically, at the time, I felt that Michael Noonan was telling these people to get stuffed. Now, Minister, at the heart of all of this, there are individual families like my family and your family, Minister. And these families are caught up in an all-consuming catastrophe. They are in mental and physical torture. And indeed, while the family that I spoke about there earlier are doing their best to fight through it, we know of families around the country who haven't been able to fight through it and who are no longer with us. So there are serious victims with regards to policies that your government has followed. And oftentimes, you know, when you answer questions to us on this, you find that Fine Gael TDs wring their hands as well. They offer in soothing tones efforts, they say, to ameliorate the damage that's been done by the vulture funds. But the truth of the matter is, and this is the stark truth, Minister, the vulture funds are an economic tool that your government has employed within the economy. You have invited the vulture funds into the Irish economy. You've invited the vulture funds into the market. You've invited the vulture funds into the family homes and the farms around the country. It is an objective that you're seeking to use. And actually, Michael Noonan said himself, he said, vultures, you know, they carry out a very good service in the ecology. Now, it's startling. And I actually think that Fine Gael's policy are often brutal and cruel. And while they have better marketing and better branding than the Tories in Britain, the damage that they actually do is actually there's very little difference between them. And it's important here as well because sometimes TDs here, they finish up late and they go home and they forget about what's happened in the day. But it's really important to realise that the decisions we make here as TDs and the votes that we take lead to effects on other human beings. And we are directly and personally responsible for what happens to those other human beings as a result of the decisions we make here. For too long, people have tried to distance themselves from the damage that's been done, or to isolate themselves, to insulate themselves from the damage that's been done. Fine Gael TDs are directly responsible for what having these families, for the tools that they're actually using. And it's astounding that you know, some of the people who are trying to unwind their problems with these vulture funds, they find that the vulture funds won't talk to them. And I say to them, well, the vulture funds won't talk to us. It's incredible that the vulture funds are giving 2 fingers to the Oireachtas and to the elected representatives here in Leinster House. They were in refusing to actually come to the committee. The vulture funds know that they are untouchable because Fine Gael have made them untouchable, and as a result, they just ignore the invites that have been given by the Finance Committee to them. But the vulture funds are not shy. They're not, you know, they're well able to talk, and when they get an opportunity to talk to decision makers directly out of the public glare, that's what they do. And the report that has been commissioned has shown that the vulture funds have met with the Department of Finance 125 times in the last few years. The vulture funds have open access to the Department of Finance. They're given the elected members 2 fingers, and yet they have open access into the Department of Finance. It's incredible, that would happen. Now, I understand that the Minister for State routinely meets companies that will be considered vulture funds, although their interest may not be in the residential property. But I want to say that I commend the Finance Committee and the Cathaoirleach for publishing this report. And the information in the report is striking. And I also have to say, though, that I look at the report, and the committee recommends that the government introduce legislation to provide for the regulation of entities that are currently unregulated, the loan owners operating in the Irish market. Now, 3 years and 4 months ago, I sat in the Finance Committee, and I made exactly the same proposal in a piece of legislation in the committee. Only 2 members of that committee voted for that proposal. That was myself and Richard Boyd Barrett. And unfortunately, Fine Gael, Fianna Fáil and the Labour Party voted against that proposal, and that was 3 years, 4 months ago. Now, I know that there are exceptions within Fianna Fáil with regards this particular issue, but it's really important that we actually intervene here, and both Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael can step in and intervene. It's important also to mention that regulation, while it will help, is not going to be a silver bullet, far from it. To stop the vultures, you have to stop feeding them. And the Minister is in a position to stop feeding them through the Minister's influence over the banks and NAMA. And to be able to draw a line and say no more will happen in the future is important. And again, I'd ask the Minister to do that, to actually use their influence for the people that they represent rather than the business interest. In so many aspects in Irish society, whether it's housing, whether it's banking, whether it's health, whether it's Moore Street, and even education, Fine Gael's natural instinct is to defer to the private sector all of the time. Now, the private sector have an important role to play in this country. We need to have commercial activity in this country for the country to function. But we don't have to defer to them at all occasions, and that the market is not always the solutions to these issues, especially the distorted market that the government has created. Thank you.